All right, I think we're ready to start. Hello and welcome to the 2021 West Anchorage Candidates Forum for School Board. My name is Matt Johnson and I am president of the North Star Community Council. I would like to take a moment to acknowledge that the members of our community councils live, work, and play on Dena'ina lands. I am joined this evening by my colleagues from the Sand Lake, Spenard, Turnagain, and Midtown Community Councils. It has been my privilege to work with representatives from each of these community councils to help organize tonight's forum. I would like to particularly thank Kathy Gleason, Vice President of the Turnagain Community Council, for her role in organizing this forum and many years of in-person forum at the Spenard Rec Center. Welcome school board candidates for seats B, E, F, and G to the forum this evening. We ask that all candidates be courteous, respectful of our ground rules, and please direct your responses to the audience. We look forward to a substantive debate with civil discourse. Our moderator this evening is Mr. Parker Haymans, President of the Sand Lake Community Council, and our timekeeper is Ms. Meg Milkey, Secretary of the Spenard Community Council. Again, thank you candidates for your participation. I will hand the mic over to Mr. Parker Haymans.
Welcome everyone, and as Matt with the North Star Community Council indicated, we are glad to be able to host you this evening, as we normally aspire to host these meetings in person and look forward to hosting these forums in person in the future. This Zoom meeting is a webinar. It is different from a regular Zoom meeting, and so you'll see that if you are an attendee watching us this evening. For the attendees, there will not be a chat or Q&A with the public. Instead, we solicited questions ahead of time, as the aforementioned community councils have met 7 separate times to ensure that we host a smooth forum this evening. Ground rules for the candidates. We are looking to do yes and no questions. These, a friendly reminder, these were shared with candidates ahead of time, and we'll be sending, and we'll send these out with the recording to our various community councils, as well to our community council Facebook pages, should our community councils have those. There will be introductions, 30 seconds each by each candidate. And I will go straight down the list, alphabetical order. These names were randomized by a computer for the introductions within each respective seat category, if you will. The questions that will be asked, there will be 6 of them, and you'll have roughly 1 minute to respond to each of these questions. For timekeeping, Meg Milky has the stopwatch and will hold up time limit signs to keep our event running smoothly. And in lieu of a bell, we'll mute your line when your time is up. Again, thank you everyone for joining us this evening. It's been a snowy day here in Anchorage. Thankfully, it's still sunny out this evening. You know, I'm looking out my window right now and it looks fun, but we have business to conduct this evening. It's the West Anchorage Community Council's Candidates Forum, hosted as often as there is a municipal election, such as, you know, we'll do a mayoral candidates forum later this week, or in the future, maybe an assembly one. But tonight, let's get ready to listen to our 16 West Anchorage Candidate Forum attendees. These 16 candidates have kindly joined us, and it is my pleasure to be able to introduce each of these candidates. So essentially the Candidate Forum Planning Committee, we were thinking, a good opening 30 seconds may or may not entail why each candidate may be the best for their respective school board seat in which they're running for. So let's start with none other than seat B with Marilyn Stewart.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for having me. My name is Marilyn Stewart, and I'm running to represent you on the Anchorage School Board. I was born and raised in the Deep South near Mobile, Alabama during the time of integrations in the Civil Rights era. And as African American, I witnessed firsthand the progress of our school system when all children are given an equal opportunity to succeed. I joined the Army in 1981. I was stationed at Fort Richardson. I fell in love with this state, and I have 2 children here. I'm raising 3 generations, and there in return is raising my grandkids here. All 3 of them are in the Anchorage school system. And
Thank you, Marilyn. Up next, we have with seat B, Mark Cox.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mark Anthony Cox. The question is, what makes me the best candidate? Well, voters, that's up to you. What I have to offer is empathy and expertise. Empathy coming from the fact that I'm the president and CEO of Family Charity of Alaska, a nonprofit charitable organization, and I deal with taking care of families in need every day. When it comes to empathy, I'm also a U.S. Army vet. When it comes to expertise, I'm a UAA and an ASD graduate. And I also come with the opportunity to show you that it's more than just a position for me. It's a way of life, giving back to our kids and our families. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Up next, we have with seat B, Kelly Lessens.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. I'm the parent of 2 elementary school students in the Anchorage School District, and I'm the best candidate for this position because I'm the only one with a track record of having actually implemented real change for about 1/3 of our elementary school students. Maybe you've heard of my work with ASD 60. I'm ready to build on that. I'm excited to work to improve student outcomes by focusing on improved equity, wellness, and learning. Thanks for the opportunity to be here.
Thank you, Kelly. And last but not least, with seat B, we have Judy Eledge.
Thank you so much for allowing us to be here tonight. I have 40 years of diverse educational experience. I've worked in both urban in the Anchorage School District. I've also worked all over rural Alaska. I've been a principal of a teacher. I am someone that can make tough decisions. I have worked with low performing schools, and with 60% of our students in the Anchorage School District not able to read at grade level, I think I can bring a very diverse background on what we might do to help those students. I appreciate it. Thank you.
And thank you, Judy. All right, for our next seat, we have seat E. Up first, we have Alisha Hilde. Or Hilde.
Thank you, Parker. Hi, everyone. My name is Alisha Hilde, and I'm running for re-election to seat E on the Anchorage School Board. I'm in my first term on the board and have served as vice president in governance. I know the board's policies well and have a positive relationship with all of our superintendent and board members. I'm a mom of 3 kids in the district, the only board member with elementary age kids. I think that's an important voice. I'm an attorney, have a master's in public policy, and was a public school teacher. I'm really focused on cost benefit analysis and long-term planning to really improve student outcomes. So I hope you'll vote for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Alisha. Up next, we have Pat Higgins.
Hi, my name is Pat Higgins. I was on the school board from 2008 to 2017. We listened to the public, gave directions to administration, and held the administration accountable. A lot was accomplished, including the CTE expansion at West Romick. Today, the board takes directions from the superintendent, not the public. The board should be addressing lower graduation rates and academic scores prior to the pandemic. I'm the only candidate with school board experience that meets the expectations of the National School Board Association. I want to help the new board meet those expectations.
Thank you, Pat. Up next, we have Sami Graham.
Hi, I'm Sami Graham. I am Alaska grown. I'm a product of the ASD, graduated from West High, as did my 3 kids. I was a teacher, a counselor, and a principal in Anchorage. I have 2 master's degrees. I'm running because of my extreme concern about student achievement, and that's my #1 concern. I think we should use the taxpayers' money wisely. At $841 million, it's a lot of money, And I think politics should never be in the classroom. I think I'm the best candidate. Thanks for voting for me.
Thank you, Sami. Up next, we have Rachel Blakeslee.
Hi, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here tonight. My name is Rachel Blakeslee and I'm running for seat E. I bring relevant and recent experience in the classroom. I am a former teacher and I still work in public education for a large education nonprofit. I've been in the education sector for over 10 years and have dedicated my life to helping students reach their full potential. And that's what I want to do for our kids here in Anchorage.
Thank you, Rachel. Up next, we have Edgar Blatchford.
Oh, thank you very much for inviting me here tonight. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm a candidate for seat E, Anchorage School Board. I'm born and raised in Alaska, born in Nome, raised in Stewart. I am a professor at the University of Alaska, Anchorage. I've been there since 1995. I have seen the results of the public school system in my classroom, and I think I could help Anchorage and the state of Alaska do a much better job in educating the youth of the state. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Edgar. Up next, we have Nial Williams.
Hi, thank you. Niall Sherwood Williams, representing CD. When y'all vote me in, I promise to reopen all schools immediately to full time. I will oppose those members of the community and the administration that discriminated against those that can't wear masks and choose not to vaccinate. I'll give the kids their recess and lunch times back and their desks back. Vote me in and I'll balance the budget as is statutorily required and the board currently has been negligent on. Thank you.
Thank you, Niall. All right, up next we have seat F. Up first, we have Marcus Sanders.
Good evening, everyone. I just want to say thank you for giving us this opportunity and giving me this opportunity. My name is Marcus Sanders. I was born in Alaska, raised in Alaska, schooled in Alaska, went to Tudor Elementary, Windler Middle School, and graduated from East High School. I believe it's time to get focused and get back on the right track, running for CF, and I believe I can be a great value to the school board in this election. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcus. And I've been informed that Dan Loring, candidate for seat F, was unable to join us this evening. So we will move to Dora Wilson with seat F. Welcome, Dora.
Hi, thank you for having me here this evening. My name is Dora Wilson. I am running for seat F for the Anchorage School Board. I am really excited to have the opportunity to bring a tremendous amount of perspective to the school board as a mom, a foster parent, a school business partner. I'm a first generation graduate with a master's in business, and I have advocated for our youth for the past 25 years. So it really makes me happy to have the opportunity to advocate for all of our students and our families on the school board. So I really do hope I can earn your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Dora. And last but not least, we have Kim Paulson.
Hi, I'm Kim Paulson. Thank you for having all of us here tonight. My experience as a parent, as an adult student, as a former foster child, is what qualifies me to run for school board. I'm not an insider in the system. I am open to creative ways to boost student achievement, and I have passion for student success, and I'm willing to make difficult choices to do that, to put students first. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. And last but not least, we have seat G with two candidates. First up would be Elisa Vakalis, and I am so sorry, Elisa, I have not been able to nail that last name yet.
Quite all right. Thank you for having me tonight. My name is Elisa Vakalis, and I'm running for my third term for seat G. I am a born and raised Anchorage person. I graduated from Bartlett way back when, and I have 4 children that are currently ASD graduates. Over the last 6 years, I can bring my experience with how we work with our kids and teach our kids, the balancing of the budget and the focus on student outcomes. What sets me apart from my opponent, one thing that I can do in 10 seconds or less, is I don't have any unions or PACs or other groups out there endorsing or funding me. I am here for the kids, not the adults. Thank you.
Thank you. And last but not least, to round out our candidate introductions, we have Carl Jacobs.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Carl Jacobs, and I am running for seat G on the Anchorage School Board. I'm running as a career public servant responsible for ensuring the safety of our elders and children as an investigator and regulatory enforcement specialist, and for the last decade as a licensed therapeutic foster parent to approximately 40 Alaskan youth. I'm looking forward to proving I'm the best candidate by utilizing my governance board and budget management experience to address the challenges facing the Anchorage School District and ensuring the board is better connected to the community in which it serves. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, and welcome everyone. We're very excited to get to our Q&A, if you will. It is a pleasure again to welcome all of you, and on behalf of the North Star, Sand Lake, Spenard, Turnagain, and Midtown Community Councils, thank you very much for being able to join us this evening. Friendly reminder, these questions were compiled by the co-sponsoring community councils. They will be directed to all candidates by seat, and individual answers will be limited to roughly 1 minute each. As there are 15 candidates on this call with 6 questions, let's dive into the Q&A. So up first, question 1 for seat B, and that's a friendly reminder. We'll go seat by seat. Question 1 will be seat B, then seat E, then seat F, then seat G. So question 1 for seat B with Marilyn Stewart. In your opinion, what is the greatest challenge in our schools, and how would you specifically address the issue?
Well, I think right now the greatest challenge that we are facing right now is getting our kids back in school and trying to figure out where they're at once we get them back there. They're going to come back, you know, they've been gone for over a year, so they won't be coming back as a normal student. We got to figure out where they're at with their learning capability, and we got to come together as a board and to determine how do we get them back up to par to where they're at. I think that's going to be the #1 priority, is to make sure that we get our kids back to up to par where they need to be.
All right, thank you. And up next, we've got, excuse me, we've got Mark Cox with seat B for question 1.
Hello, once again, I'm Mark Anthony Cox. So question 1 is in regards to what is the biggest challenge? Well, obviously we would have to say it was COVID-19, and it still is. So it created this unprecedented just challenges in regards to what it caused us to do as a school board and also as a school. It made us pivot on our feet and adopt policies that other states were doing in order to just make something work. And it showed a lot of flexibility on our part, but in order to be more effective, we need to once again reassess where we're at budgetary wise, but also in our curriculum. We need to understand that our children right now, when it comes to ratings, are least educated in regards to where Alaska is. So we need to challenge them more, because it's not that they're not inherently intelligent. It's just that we need to catch them where they're at, use ability tracking, and then nourish their inherent talents. And we can do this in a fiscal way. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mark. All right, for question 1, we have Kelly Lessens.
I think one of the unique challenges of the coming year overlaps with the unique circumstance that seat B is a year-long position. Right now, instead of facing a shortfall, we are actually having an influx of federal funds. So the question for each of these candidates for seat B is really, how do we apply these increased federal funds in a way that is equitable, that reaches our students' needs, that helps accelerate the students who need to make up those gaps, while still making sure we retain our teachers, think about long-term goals, think about providing better preschool opportunities in the long run. So how do we weigh those short and long-term goals with this unique moment of increased federal funds?
Thank you. And last but not least, we have Judy Eledge with seat B for question 1.
Okay, thank you. I think that the ASD education spending has continually increased over the years and our academic achievement has fallen. We're now that in 1981, we were second in the nation. Now we're near the bottom in academics in 4th grade. And Alaska's dead last in the US in reading, and 60% of our kids in the Anchorage School District cannot read at grade level at 4th grade. These negative, these lack of proficiencies are going to negatively impact the kids for the rest of their life. And this was before COVID, so I can't imagine how it will impact them now. I think the educational system overall has just grown too large and lost sight of its mission. And I have to agree with Kelly on this. How are we going to ensure that that $60 million, at least minimum, coming into the state is used to help children fill that gap that they've lost in the last year? And that is going to be a very important decision, and it needs to be looked at closely. I cannot see the timekeeper, so I don't know, they're not on. So if we're supposed to have time, I can't see her. I'm not sure what I'm doing wrong.
And thank you for that feedback, Judy. Please bear with us while we work out that technical difficulty. Apologies, everyone. Thankfully, according to my rough estimate, we are ahead of schedule on our timeline, so.
Yeah, everyone's been doing a really good job staying on track. I think folks should be able to see us. It looks like if you have us in gallery view, you should be able to see me, but you will be muted if you go like a couple seconds over. But thank you, candidates, for staying in time.
Thank you.
And truly, thank you for that feedback, Judy. Moving right along, we have seat E. So for seat E, question 1, and I will repeat the question for each seat in case your chat, excuse me, in case the question has been misplaced on your computer or otherwise. Seat E, in your opinion, what is the greatest challenge in our schools, and how would you specifically address the issue? So starting with CE, let's start with Alisha.
Thank you so much. The absolute greatest challenge in our district is student achievement. That has been my focus and continues to be. I push for aggressive growth in K-3 reading proficiency to double it over the next 5 years. That will be the priority of the board, whoever you choose, but how do we do it is the important part. The board has to have regular accountability. So we're doing that twice a month to do progress monitoring in a very public way. At the national level, I have our board opened up to accountability where we are tracking our interim goals to make sure our students are on track and that our resources are aligned with what we're saying that funding is. And then looking at innovative ways to deliver it. Student learning has had a disparate impact over the pandemic. Lower income students struggling even more. So really targeting funding toward really focusing on the reading goals and making sure our resources are aligned to hit those. I bring the experience to do it and the ongoing work with other board members and our superintendent to make sure we can continue.
Thank you, Alisha. Up next, we have Pat for CE question 1.
Thank you. I think the focus is academic outcomes. It's been declining in the recent past. It was declining in 2019 before the pandemic. It started declining with the new adoption of a reading program. There are math program issues, and it needs to be reviewed. There's an audit process that the board used to have. There's no audit committee right now, but there needs to be an audit by the board. They've got the resources to do that very inexpensively, and it makes a big difference. In 2010, we had a problem with everyday math. We did an audit, found out it was failing because of that. We switched and academics went up. We need the board to be engaged with an audit committee. We need to focus on a comprehensive audit review that differentiates instructions for different kids so that we can get the kind of results we need, because they have been declining, and it's been prior to the pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. All right, and up next, CE, we have Sami Graham.
Hi there. I agree with the other two people that student performance is absolutely the number one problem or issue in the district. It's alarming that it's the number one thing, but the schools stayed closed for the entire year. So opening the schools was the number one thing that needed to happen. We need to create a culture of achievement by setting high expectations and having rigorous curriculum. Use data then to align the curriculum to the state standards. We need to build superior teachers through professional development and support those superior teachers, hold the teachers, the principals, the superintendent, and the board accountable. And we need to monitor and measure the outcomes. And we need to make sure that we have professional development. The other thing is to hire principals and teachers and then get rid of the bad ones. And the other thing is we have to have the whole entire community behind us for that, to boost that student achievement. Thank you.
Thank you, Sami. And up next, we have Rachel for question 1.
Yeah, this is a great question. So I agree that, COVID, for example, has caused huge disruptions in our public education and have caused our students to fall further behind than they already were, and has widened opportunity gaps that have been longstanding. I think that we have to approach that issue of student achievement, though, not just in a vacuum. So if we continue our age-old approach of teaching kids how to test, we're going to continue to fail them. If we need to start by making sure that we're addressing kids who are at the highest risk of long-term learning loss from COVID, and continuing to provide them with grade level content and scaffolded supports so the expectations are kept high and a belief in all kids is kept high. And we also need to make sure that we're providing a comprehensive approach to education that includes a lot of components that are equally important, like social emotional resilience and project-based learning skills and relevant 21st century learning skills as well.
Thank you, Rachel. Up next, we have Edgar with CE for question 1.
Thank you very much. I think the greatest challenge facing the people of Alaska, the people of Anchorage, the students, is the loss of confidence in our future. I think Alaska has a great future. We just lack the motivation to succeed. For far too long, we've been dealing with the issues of oil prices crashing, not enough money for this, and then we have COVID-19. I think the future of Alaska is great, and I think if we can motivate our students, the people that we serve, that we can go a lot longer, a lot further, and we can succeed in everything that we aspire to. It is often told many, many times that we have to have role models, and role models set the confidence for the people of the school district, with the faculty, with the students, fellow students, and with the teachers. If we don't add confidence, we are not going to succeed. Thank you.
Thank you, Edgar. And up next, last but not least, we have Nial for CE with question 1.
Hello, Nial Sherwood Williams, and listening to all the previous candidates for CE, it's like being at a loud rock concert and listening to it at maximum volume. Bunch of noise, but a bunch of nothing. We need to set the bars high: math, science, technology. Let's start to train our students from kindergarten on up. Stop the drama. There's no need for looking at numbers or anything like that, except for in those 3 categories. And let's train them to defeat the communist Chinese, to defeat the Russians, and let's start winning on a state level, on a national level. It's a matter of a battle for the Republic. That is all. I won't waste your time or your ears. Thank you.
Thank you, Nial. All right. As a friendly reminder, I'll repeat question 1 and all questions before each seat category. So for seat F, in your opinion, what is the greatest challenge in our schools, and how would you specifically address the issue? Up first, we have Marcus Sanders.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. And yeah, we're ahead of schedule, so no worries on the technical difficulties.
Okay. Oh,
There we go. Sorry about that. Yep. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm good now. Okay, well, I think we all can agree that COVID-19 has been a thorn in all of our side. And we are coming to a day where we're getting back on track. But all the same, our children have lost about 331 days in the classroom. That's about 215 days of math they've lost and 116 days of reading. I think the most important thing is getting our classroom and not being afraid. We have teachers right now who are working via Zoom who are overstressed and frustrated. So we need to help being a support to our teachers right now. It's hard to help a student virtually or from a computer and not having that face-to-face contact. And so I believe getting back into the classroom is our first road to getting back on track. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcus. Up next, we have Dora with CF.
Yes, thank you. So I know many folks have already said student achievement, and I don't disagree with that at all. The graduation rates for many of our students is way too low. It's an opportunity to outreach to our communities, to our leaders, to our community leaders, community organizations, to partner with them to find out where we are failing those kids, how we can improve our outcomes for our students. There are many reasons for the student achievement being so low. Pre-K it would be great to have more pre-K for our students. Career and life readiness is extremely important. There is such a focus on our kids going to college and university that I don't feel like there's enough focus for the 70% of our students that don't choose a four-year degree, that want the options and career options for apprenticeship, for on-the-job training, for vocational trades. So a heavier focus on career and life readiness for our students to engage them earlier, get them excited about their careers.
Thank you, Dora. And last but not least, for CDEF, we have Kim Paulson.
I think the biggest concern right now are the effects of the pandemic on our children, academically and with student depression. And this is just from my experience with my son. High achiever, wanted to drop out of school, asked twice seriously to drop out, and he was depressed. He became depressed. And the biggest challenge right now is going to be motivation. He wants to go to school. All the students who have been pushing for it want to be back in school, but there's the motivation dealing with seeing value in it again, seeing value in school again. And that's the biggest challenge, I think, is renewing that motivation. And we need to be patient with our students when they go back to school because of all of the rules. It's going to be different. We wanted them there, but it's going to be different. And so definitely we need the teacher support and the staff support. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. All right, and our last seat category, if you will, seat G. Friendly reminder, I'll read off the question. In your opinion, what is the greatest challenge in our schools and how would you specifically address the issue? Let's start with, and please correct me if I am mistaken, but Elisa Vakalis, is that a better rendering? And apologies for any mispronunciation on names.
Elisa Vakalis.
Elisa Vakalis. Third
Yes,
time's
sir.
the charm. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. I've been on the board for 6 years, and the last thing I'm going to do is sit here and say everything is rosy. We have work to do. There is no doubt. I'm also here to say I can't pick just one challenge. We have many. So the first one, which is obvious, and a lot of people have touched on it with this many candidates, how could we not? It would be COVID and all of its complications. You know, a full and safe return of our students to the classroom is just critical. We know that's where our kids learn best. But we also need to have options for those that are not ready, or those that decided that, you know, learning from home was better for them or their families. So we need to provide options for our kids across the board, hands down. Got to deal with the learning loss. We've got an amazing summer school program coming up. It needs the support of the board, the administration, and our community. Budgets over the next couple of years are going to be painful. Many have referenced the 60 million. That's pretty much almost all been spent. The next round has not been announced, but it needs to go towards our goals and our guardrails, which is getting our students reading from 40 to 80% and in, working on our kids from kindergarten to graduation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And last but not least, to round out question 1 with seat G, we have Carl Jacobs.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate the question. I think the most pressing issue for our district continues to be student achievement. As has been previously discussed, this is not a new issue, but has been ongoing and unresolved for years. The number of students with a failing grade is growing, and a majority of those grades are earned by children of color or economically disadvantaged youth. We know our students returning to the classroom, alone won't solve our achievement gaps. Over the last year, many children have fallen through the cracks. We must first understand the nature and scope of the problem, and we need to better connect with Anchorage area families and students to identify the needs and the gaps and how we can fill those. Wisely utilizing not just the currently received federal funding, but any future funds is also critical. We need to identify youth that are struggling, provide the tools necessary for them to be successful, but that means we must be better engaged, and we have a ton of work to do.
All right, thank you, Carl, and thank you everyone for providing your responses for question 1. Up next, we have question 2, and starting with seat E. I'm going to go bottom to top this time. Let's start with Nial Williams with seat E for question 2. And taking into consideration the fact that in-person education has been halted for nearly a year, and many children have fallen behind in one or more academic areas, please provide specific steps on what can be done to help students catch up.
Hi, Nial Williams, School Board CD. I'm the only candidate out of the 6 that will unequivocally open all schools immediately to full-time in-person education. Now, let me just state that this doesn't mean that you can't hold your kids out and Zoom them in if you want. However, teachers are required to report immediately on my first day. Math, science, and technology are very important areas to student success in life. Regardless of what avenue you choose, whether it's a high school diploma or whether you choose to go to trade school, all of those areas create success in life. We have denied students access to compulsory education, which is a human right here in the United States of America. So to keep kids out of schools, further, all the families should receive a $13,350 check per student for the fact that their kids were held out of school against their will. That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nial. And for CE, we have Edgar Blatchford.
Thank you very much. That's a good question. I think the number one thing that we have to do is we have to instill confidence in the student that they can catch up. I think the best thing that we can do is to allow the student to have a safe place to study. We have to realize and recognize that the people at the lower income brackets don't necessarily have the places in their homes to study uninterrupted. Without that opportunity to study uninterrupted, then they will not succeed, because academic work is academic work and it requires concentration and focus. And I think that if we have the confidence to look at the future of Alaska as bright and that we can do it, then we can overcome almost any obstacle. We've done it before on numerous occasions. We can do it again. So again, let me repeat, the best thing that we can do right now is to find quiet places for the students to do their academic work so that they can catch up. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Edgar. Up next, we have Rachel Blakeslee.
So luckily, there are a lot of emerging national studies that give us a lot of credible and evidence-based recommendations to help us actually address this very question. So for example, we could explore and should explore more options for expanded learning time, which the school district already is in terms of summer school, but could also look like structured after school programs or extended school days. And the key here with all these options is to make sure that students are getting to learn in smaller groups and that instruction is grounded in both core subjects and is kept culturally relevant. I think we should invest in high quality one-on-one tutoring if possible. And if that seems difficult to implement at scale, you start with the kids who are at the highest risk for long-term learning loss, and incorporate additional supports like paraprofessionals and recent college grads to help in that tutoring. And finally, I think that we need to be proactive about providing families with accessible resources in various languages and various modalities to make sure that they're able to continue helping their children in whatever capacity they're able to at home.
Thank you, Rachel. Up next, we have Sami Graham, CE, for question 2.
Hi, thank you. I think the first thing that we need to do is give the kids hope. They've been missing that hope for a whole entire year through just staring at computer screens. We need to have access to rigorous curriculum and really great instruction. We need to be sure that we know our student population and then tailor that instruction to that population. That's really important. You can do that through vertical and horizontal alignment, through looking at data. Really important to invite the community to help and be part of this process, because it's going to take a whole entire community to help with this. We need to make sure that we differentiate the instruction and have strong sports and arts and extracurricular so that the kids have that hope and are engaged in the school. Part of that also would be CT&E, career technology education. Make sure that we have those high expectations. Thank you.
Thank you, Sami. Up next, Pat Higgins, CE, for question 2.
That's probably better. Thank you. When the pandemic began, the district responded quickly by closing schools, which is a safe thing to do. But what they didn't do was to focus on connections of the kids that were leaving school to make sure they stayed in contact. So we have 2 groups. We have groups that are completely left behind and those that have failed within the system because it's off school property. We had a chance prior to the fall to at least look at the computerized system and recognize that some of those could have been remodeled with the surplus they had from that year, but they didn't do any of that. At this point in time, there's a few things that come to mind. One thing, we can end up using a SAVE type program, which allows accelerated classwork within the schools. And the other is summer school. 19% growth in academic outcomes for kids in grammar school that go to summer school. That's what we found out in 2010. We also know that the SAVE program, some kids actually graduate before their class when they use the accelerated program. So we need to look at these options and more. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. And last but not least, for CE, we have Alisha Hilde.
Thank you. Well, the primary purpose right now of the federal funding is to target toward that learning loss. So the board needs to be very intentional in watching how that money is spent. I pushed in the fall to get our schools safely reopened. And now that they all are reopened, the challenge is to make rebuilding those connections and engagement with the learning a priority. That's gonna be done through evidence-based measures. Chicago just released a study this week showing 1-to-1, 1-to-4 tutoring for high school math, showing dramatic results for very low investment. When we use evidence-based measures, we can make sure that our students are getting the help that they need. Focusing on our board goal of college life and career readiness, relevancy to what you're learning is what engages kids, right? So if you have a high schooler who knows what their next step is in life, so we're talking about financial literacy and CTE courses, and we have 2 CTE courses, we know you're 95% likely to graduate. So working the goals that we've already established, they're designed to connect kids to their future and to make sure they're prepared for that, but really meeting kids where they are. Thank you.
Thank you, Alisha. All right, moving along with the randomization. Yes, we did not start with seat B. We are going to seat F. I know that it's school board, but we're not following the alphabet on each question this evening. So starting with seat F, a friendly reminder for question 2, taking into consideration the fact that in-person education has been halted for nearly a year, and many children have fallen behind in one or more academic areas. Please provide specific steps on what can be done to help students catch up. So, starting with seat F, let's begin with Kim Paulson.
I think what we need to do is return to school or learning 5 days a week, whether it's in the building or at home. And then for our students who are struggling academically, we need to provide tutoring or just help for them after school. And we are going to have to do summer school. And then I think the other thing is when our kids are in school learning, that the focus needs to be on academic learning. Thank you. Sorry, that threw me off.
No problem. Hopefully it wasn't me rocking back and forth in my desk chair.
That's okay.
All right. Let's go next with question 2, seat F, Dora Wilson.
So identifying the students that are going to need the additional assistance is fairly evident based on this last year's academics. And in part, we've been able to identify the families as well that have needed that additional assistance. So providing smaller groups of after school care, of summer school, of whatever we can do to give them that more of an individual boost to try to help them out, making sure that they have access to the internet that they need, because they are, and their families as well, making sure they have access to the materials they need in multiple different languages, if that's the case, and really bringing in partners within the community to try to help all of our kids achieve. Identifying not only the students that are failing academically, but the ones who really needed, our special needs students who needed that additional assistance to begin with. There are so many things we can do, and I'm excited to have the opportunity to help identify those needs.
Thank you, Dora. And last but not least, for seat F, we have Marcus Sanders. And
Can you hear me?
yes, sir.
Oh my God, you keep muting me. Well, I think I agree with a lot of the candidates here. We've lost so much time. Like I said before, we lost over 331 days in the classroom. So I think we all can agree that there's going to need to be some type of summer school program. And we can have these supported programs. We have supported volunteers and aides who understand all our children, especially of Native culture. I believe that we're going to need increased class time. We may have to have some longer school days, but we need not to forget that we need some physical activity. Our kids have been cooped up, so we need to bring back, the sports and have some break time and some recess time for physical and mental health. So I believe that we can start there. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcus, and apologies for the technical difficulties. We'll try to improve on any inadvertent mute malfunctions.
It's a conspiracy.
No, sir. not from my hands. Let's move right along to seat G, question 2. Starting with question 2, let's taking into consideration the fact that in-person education has been halted for nearly a year and many children have fallen behind in one or more academic areas. Please provide specific steps on what can be done to help students catch up. Starting in seat G, let's begin with Carl Jacobs.
Sure. So early data available seems to indicate strategies which typically promote student success will also work to mitigate learning loss. Maintaining smallest class size possible is critical, and providing options to students and families must also be a focus. Summer school programs, small groups, tutoring options are all wonderful ideas to provide using the $50 million we've received in one-time federal funding. Unfortunately, we've used some of that money to fund 200 plus educator positions instead, and so we'll have limited options, but we need to wisely use those resources as best as possible. I also think we need to focus on caring for the whole child, improving access to mental health supports. As we all know, child welfare issues have spiked during the pandemic. Our assembly has chosen to provide funding for mental health programming in ASD campuses in conjunction with Providence Behavioral Health. We should work closely with state, local, even federal partners to expand that so we can mitigate the already high adverse childhood experience scores our youth experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. And our other candidate in seat G, Elisa Vakalis, excuse me.
Thank you. So have a lot of the same themes with some of the other candidates as well. We're about to have our largest summer school program ever that ASD has put on using some of those federal funds. And like Alisha Hilde had mentioned, using these federal funds for what they are intended to be is going to be an incredibly, it's a focus of the board, and it should be, and it should remain so. Alaska has always aspired towards the bottom in terms of how long in a day or a year that we teach our kids. And so, maybe one of the things we look at those federal funds for is longer school days and a longer school year for the next few years to help work on some of that catching up. We need to meet our students where they are and put the resources towards those that need it. We're going to have to acknowledge some need more and some need less, and that's okay. Those that need it should get it. Tutoring, mental health, after school programming, stuff like that. One of our guardrails is that none of our elementary schools go without mental health support, and I can't imagine a better place and time to make that happen right now.
All right, thank you, Elisa, or Elisa. I'm gonna get it right, I promise. Trying. All right, and last but not least, for question 2, we have seat B. Let's begin. And as a friendly reminder, as always, I will repeat the question before we have candidate answers. So for seat B, taking into consideration the fact that in-person education has been halted for nearly a year and many children have fallen behind in one or more academic areas, please provide specific steps on what can be done to help students catch up. So starting with, ending with seat B, but starting with Judy Eledge. Welcome, Judy. And apologies for any technical difficulties. Oh,
I
nope.
apologize. Okay, I think we need to ask something we've not done is ask parents and students what kind of support do they need to begin with. Seems like we've been more concerned about teachers or what the local teachers union wanted instead of what was best for parents and students this year, in my opinion. The very first thing we're going to have to do is we're going to have to assess all these students and find out where they are. People may not like assessments, but you can't fill a gap if you don't know where that gap is. I would immediately start with after-school tutoring right now. We've got the money to do it. It should be offered to every student. It can be done. It could be done by Zoom or in a small group. I'm glad to know that they're going to have an intensive summer school. And why I don't understand right now why we don't have our high school kids who have been out all year. They're only going 4 days a week. I think someone told me that it was because the teachers needed to adjust. I'm not sure what that reason was. Maybe someone can tell me, but to me, we need to make decisions that put kids and their families first, and we've not been doing that.
Thank you, Judy. Up next for question 2, we have Kelly Lessens.
Great. I think this is a wonderful question, and it really exemplifies why I'm running for school board. I want to focus on student equity, student wellness, and student learning. And if we bring these three visions to this problem, I think we can tackle it together. To begin with, I think we need to focus on our students' social and emotional needs. You know, we've heard so much from the community about how important being in school is to our mental health. Well, it's time to step up and sort of put our money where our mouth is. We need to put our time where our concerns have been. I think we need to consider the role of testing. It's useful, but I also think we could back off a little bit from the excessive testing and focus maybe on statistically significant testing or sample sizes, and also just defer to individual teachers' judgments in conversations with their students. I'd like to see us commit to tutoring in combination with counselors, commit to smaller class sizes, and commit to curriculum that offers genuine student engagement.
Thank you, Kelly. Question 2 with Mark Anthony Cox. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you so much. So all these things that we're talking about, it doesn't just affect our students, it affects our teachers and our faculty too. So we need to discuss at length and qualify all questions and comments of all the parties involved, because that's the step one, is seeing how can we help everyone out. Then step 2 is moving into having these plans. So everyone buckle your seatbelts, we're gonna get into these plans. We have a hybrid learning model. Step 1 is we can have the students who are excelling in the virtual environment, let them stay in the virtual environment, and we give them the social portion of it in school. So we'll be able to retain our students as well as be ambidextrous in this effort. And then also with that, we have our students who aren't doing well. We can assure those smaller class sizes in those rooms, and then still give them the opportunity to once again have that social emotional learning aspect. And now also we need to rethink the school year. I mean, it's from agrarian based society where in the summer months you'd work. So we need to think of maybe 45 weekdays on, 15 days off. Of course, we have that intensive summer school program. Congratulations, school board members. And then we also need to consider possibly shortening the winter and summer breaks. These are the things that are easy to be done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. And last but not least, for seat B with question 2, we have Marilyn Stewart. Apologies for the delay, folks. Would we have candidate Stewart for question 2?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'm sorry, somebody muted me. I don't know what happened. But anyway, what I'm saying, we look at summer school, that's going to be awesome. We want to identify where those barriers at, where they fall short at. Parents need to get involved, the community get involved. These kids going to come back with mental health conditions. So with all this money, we have to make sure that those dollars are going to be spent wisely on and serve our students well. The number one thing that we're going to have to look at is an assessment of these kids. I agree with Judy. People don't like to hear that word, but we're going to have to do that in order to identify where these kids are before we can even look at placing them in summer school, or how long are they going to have to go to summer school. So that's where I think that these dollars are going to have to be focused at, totally on the kids.
Thank you, Marilyn. And thank you to all candidates of seat B, E, F, and G for providing your responses to question number 2. All right, our next question, and to provide a bit of foresight for the candidates, question 3 will go seat F, G, B, and then E. So starting with seat F, what can schools do to support students' mental health and well-being and prevent and respond to mental health crises? So starting with seat F, let's begin with Dora Wilson.
Yes, I've been a therapeutic foster parent for the past 16 years. So the kids that we specialize working with have mental health issues. They have mental health needs. They have behavioral issues. And that is extremely important for our kids. And so many of them in our district have experienced trauma. And until that they have their needs, social emotional needs, their mental health needs met, it is very difficult for them to learn and to succeed. And it is unfortunate that over the years we have had to cut back. The school district has cut back on our counselors. Years back, they literally cut them in half. Our students, our families really need that additional support from the schools and from the community. So it is definitely an issue that needs to be addressed. So our kids have that social emotional learning, that our staff has a better understanding on how to work with those students, and we can get them to the point where they can learn and be successful.
Thank you, Dora. And up next for question 3, let's go with Kim Paulson.
Okay. So as someone who grew up in a therapeutic foster home, counseling offered is really important, and grace from the teachers with students. But we also need to be encouraged to do well. Be encouraged to do well, even when we're in school, even with the, even with what we, and I say we, I know I'm an adult now, but what we're going through, the healing process we're going through with that situation as being a foster child. But definitely providing counselors. I think that's what I have, is providing counselors and grace from the teachers, but we also need to not make this our identity and the student's identity. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. And last but not least, for seat F, we have Marcus Sanders.
Can you repeat that question just one more time? My computer came in and out.
No problem at all. And that's a good thing to mention. If there are any Zoom issues, feel free to ask me to chime in, repeat a question. And I hope that nobody has inadvertently fallen off our Zoom call. And thank you for bearing with us this evening. So question 3 for Marcus. What can schools do to support students' mental health and well-being and prevent and respond to mental health crises?
Well, I don't know if we have any prior military on here, but I know as a chaplain for the Alaska State Defense Force, I serve as a chaplain and as a pastor and a mentor. I know that we're going to need wraparound support for our children as they come back to the school. So we do that by asking questions, asking how the kids are doing. I know that we had cut some counselors some time ago, but we need to bring those counselors back for emotional support. We have to meet our children where they are. When I worked in the school district, I made an attempt to ask the kids every day how they were doing. I did that by asking their name, asked how they were doing. So we're going to have to ask those questions every day. How are you doing? How are you feeling? So bringing back those counselors in the school to provide those services will be a great help to our children for that wraparound support. They will suffer for some PTSD when they come back. That's one thing that I have experience in dealing with. So they will have that traumatic experience when they're coming back. So that wraparound support is what we'll need to do as they come back. Support, thank you.
Thank you, Marcus. All right, question 3 for seat G. What can schools do to support students' mental health and well-being and prevent and respond to mental health crises? So alternating between our 2 CG candidates, I believe last time I started with Carl, so this time Elisa Vakalis. Wow.
Yay!
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so to kick off my 60-second timer, the one thing I firmly believe is teachers need to teach. Teachers are not the nurses. They shouldn't be the counselors. They shouldn't be the parents. They shouldn't be any of those things. Our teachers need to be teachers. But in order for them to just do that and not have to do all of the other things that have been placed upon them, we need to put the professionals in the schools that can help with that. I don't remember the name of it. It's like a family advocate assistant. So if a kiddo is in crisis or on the verge of crisis, it goes to this professional, whether it is mental health for the student, whether it is something that's happening at home that the family needs some guidance on, but it's not affecting the classroom. And so we need to work with getting these other professionals, whether it is a counselor or a social worker or whatever title it might carry, to come in and give our school community the support that it needs so our teachers can get back to what they need and our kids and our families can continue to grow.
Thank you, Elisa. And last but not least for CG, let's go to Carl Jacobs.
Thank you. My wife, Alisha, who was born and raised in Kenai, and I have invited dozens of youth with mental and behavioral health challenges into our home. School staff must work closely with parents to ensure that resources like 504 and IEP support plans are utilized for children as appropriate. We must also recognize the emotional and developmental learning loss which has occurred over the past year. The Anchorage School District does not currently have a sufficient number of mental health support staff employed, and we must continue to advocate for the resources necessary to provide these services, in part because it hasn't been done in years past. Our teachers are not, unfortunately, not equipped for or do not have the time during class to provide these services to our youth. It will take a team effort and it will take more than one school year for us to recover completely from this pandemic, and we definitely need to be engaged and collaborative in our approach to doing so. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. All right, friendly reminder for our panelists, our candidates. Up next, Seat B, question 3. What can schools do to support students' mental health and well-being and prevent and respond to mental health crises? All right, for Seat B, let's start with Mr. Mark Anthony Cox. And apologies for not saying this earlier, sir, but thank you for your service.
And thank you for your support. So when it comes to this mental health issue, we have all the evidence that's been accumulated that show that children have suffered psychologically since this pandemic. And so the most vulnerable has been the elementary and middle-aged students. So what we need to do is be committed to a continuum of care. It's more than just education we're given, where we need to have trauma-informed practices, and teachers, they might not be the professionals, but they are frontline. So they need to be informed of what signs to look for in regards to OCD, or what signs to look for in regards to suicidal thoughts, so that they could then refer them to those professionals. And then we also need to be more committed to the fact that the funding of these programs, it's essential. Continuum of care, it's mental and education that we're giving our children. So as long as we take the time to make sure that these students can be nurtured outside of the home, as well as informed for when the time when they do get into the home, whether they be adopted or whether they be the natural born children of parents, like we have the opportunity to do the best that we can for our students. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Up next for question 3, we have Kelly Lessens.
I'm going to begin with a story. About 1.5 years ago, before COVID, our work with ASD 60 was being recognized by the state of Alaska as a public health success story. I was lucky enough to witness the story of a high school student who recounted her near suicide attempt. It shouldn't take that kind of a moment to capture the attention of the district, but through her work, she has. We have to, as a district, commit to providing the structure and the curricular support so that we don't have students experiencing what she did. We need to focus on encouraging mental health, specifically with including that mental health component in our health curriculum that needs to be offered. We need to have counselors in place. We need to have ongoing professional development so that our teachers are prepared to help become trauma-informed educators. And we need to make sure that we make space in our days to maintain specials like art, like music, have space for creative writing, the kinds of ways that students will be able to give voice to where they are in their lives.
Thank you, Kelly. Up next, we have Judy Eledge with CP for question 3.
Well, I'm going to answer this a little bit different because I don't think there's probably anyone here that has worked in any worse situations in schools than I have throughout the state of Alaska. And I have to kind of agree with Lisa. We're not there to be, the problem with schools today is that we try to be everything to everyone, so therefore we don't do anything very well. And I've told many of kids who had terrible, terrible lives, and I looked at them, I said, you know, the one thing what I can do is I can give you love, but I can give you an education so you can rise above that. And I sometimes think we spend so much time, we act like that kids have never had any emotional problems in their entire lives. And our kids probably have more than any generation that we've ever had. And so to me, it's let's come to school. I'm going to give you a safe and secure and a nurturing place to learn. But let's if we want to do this, let's put a social worker in every school, because this is something that teachers do not have the time to do with 24 kids in a classroom. Just that's honesty tonight.
Thank you, Judy. And last but not least, with seat B, we have Marilyn Stewart.
Thank you. You know, our teachers really do a lot. And I know that they can't be everything to all the children. But, you know, these children have been isolated for a year. And there are going to be some mental problems. They're going to bring them back to school. And I don't know currently what school programs that the school district have to address these issues, but we need to look at them. And then we need to see what are we going to need to take them to the next level of getting them the help. And the most important thing is that we got to get into the homes. We got to talk to the parents. We got to find out during that year that their child was isolated, what was the behavior, what was going on. Parents' involvement is going to be essential. So when we look at spending this money, we got to spend it wisely, and we got to make sure that it's going to serve these kids well. Thank you.
Thank you, Marilyn. And thank you, CP candidates. Last but not least, we have seat E for question 3. As a friendly reminder, what can schools do to support students' mental health and well-being and prevent and respond to mental health crises? So for seat E, for question 3, let's begin with Rachel Blakeslee.
So I think that this is actually one of my priorities, is around fostering and creating inclusive and nurturing classrooms, and mental health is a huge part of that. I think that for one, we need to increase our focus on social emotional learning and resilience so that our students are able to really build those emotional regulation skills and relationship skills that are essential in their life and affect their academic success. I think making sure that we have more counselors and mental health supports is essential in our schools, yes. But in addition to that, we need to make sure that we're supporting our teachers with the resources that they need, not just that they're trauma informed to identify other students' challenges, but also so that our teachers themselves, their emotional needs are also taken care of, because teachers who feel supported are then able to support their kids the most. And I know that from firsthand experience. And last but not least, I think that we need to increase our focus on having more fresh air time. Our kids have spent extraordinary amounts of times in front of screens. And there's a lot of evidence out there that shows that fresh air time really improves cognitive function and social and mental health and their mood and behavior. So I think that's huge.
Thank you, Rachel. Up next for question 3 with seat E, Edgar Blatchford.
Thank you. That's a very good question. I grew up in the territory of Alaska in early statehood days before the state was wealthy, became incredibly wealthy. We didn't have such things as counselors. So we had to have school teachers who are compassionate, could recognize the signs that the student was going through difficult times. And it doesn't take much to encourage a student. A little pat on, the back or a comforting word is all that it takes. You have to recognize that the student has a problem and the student has to be given some attention. And let me tell you, student, the 3,000 students that I've had in my academic career at the University of Alaska Anchorage, you have to be able to recognize the signs. A good teacher can recognize those signs, and it doesn't take much to encourage that student to go off and feel confident that those problems are not just with him or her alone. Thank you.
Thank you, Edgar. Up next, question 3, CE, Nial Williams.
Hi, yes, thank you. Nial Sherwood Williams, candidate for CE. I think it is very important that we not continue to put students down. The average student does not need mental health, does not need a mental health crisis counselor. With the current Anchorage ordinance of 2020-65 that was passed, the administration wants to seek to transgenderify all of our students. So I would like to say that every student should be required to use the bathroom of the genitalia of their birth. Also, those students that really do have special needs or disabilities, there's already a lot of people employed that can deal with those issues. It's very real. But to say that everyone is going to fail and has huge problems, it disincentivizes everyone involved. Set the bar high for the students. They'll surprise you where they'll achieve. Thank you.
Thank you, Nial. And up next for CE question 3, Alisha Hilde.
Thank you. I'm a strong advocate for trauma-informed practices. We're a trauma-informed family. My husband and I were foster parents, or now adoptive parents. We partner with our teachers, our school nurse, our principal, and the magical TAs who do so much of this work. When you meet the kids' needs and allow them to be successful in the classroom, then we start to see those academic improvements. They go hand in hand. It can't just be social emotional learning or just addressing mental health or trauma-informed care. It also has to be tied to the purpose of making sure they have high academic expectations. When we have more counselors in the classroom or in the school, so that's been a board priority that I've supported. Support outdoor education opportunities. Going to school in Anchorage is incredible. Every window you look out, there's a beautiful outdoor experience. And the more we incorporate that, we know those are tied to improved mental health outcomes. I was a middle school band director, so certainly music and art are things that enrich, right, our academic experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Alisha. Up next, CE question 3, Higgins.
Thank you. When I was on the school board, social emotional learning really took off in the schools. No one had a better champion than Carol Como at that time, and that was a major focus. In fact, I think it was in 2014 we won a major national award for that. The focus on social emotional learning has to be, you have to identify kids at risk, and that involves a teacher, but you've got to have counselors. Counselors are more important than guards in a school if you're trying to protect all kids. You need to identify the kids at risk for themselves and for the community as a whole. And the other is it's tied in directly to the academics. You've got kids that are distracted, they're stressed, they're not learning. So we knew that all three of those factors protect that child, protect the entire school from the safety standpoint. And then if we're going to get academic improvement, we need to recognize that social emotional learning, the state is there. And teachers will identify it, but you have to have the counselors who can help with the issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. And last but not least, for question 3, CE, we have Sami Graham.
Thank you. What prompted me to run for the school board was the listening to the students speak at the school board meeting and begging for their schools to be open, begging for their teams to be playing, begging because they saw their friends having mental health issues and themselves. I have a master's of science in counseling. I have been a counselor in the district in Title I schools. I think SEL learning is really important, and I've taught many, many SEL lessons, but there's nothing more important than lowering the class size so that the classroom teachers can have that specialized attention and the teachers can teach and build the relationships with the kids, give them the hope that they need and the confidence. Opening the schools, strong sports, arts, and extracurricular are all important, but having a stable schedule, a safe, expected learning environment for families to make connections to the schools is really important. Never ignore the social emotional health of the students. Thank you.
Thank you, Sami, and thank you all candidates of Seat B, CE, Seat F, and Seat G for your answers to question 3. Up next for question 4, we'll begin with Seat G, then going to B, E, and F. Question 4. What specific policies do you feel are necessary to ensure student safety within our schools? For Seat G, Let's begin with Carl Jacobs.
Sure, I think it's a great question. First, I think we've touched on it. Mental health supports are critical. Students who do not feel safe or welcoming or welcomed in their academic setting will not only suffer academically, but also it will inhibit a growth in a number of other areas as well. I think we also need to look to our the SRO program and make sure that students are being kept safe and it is having the desired impact. We currently lack, or at least following through with measurables in this program and better engaging our community, surveying students, identifying parents and connecting with families to ensure that it's meeting its desired outcomes is critical. We have to take action there. And then identifying challenges and ways to improve with our clients, with our families, with our educators. Student safety, the teacher safety, educator safety are critical. It should be one of our highest priorities. And I think there are a number of ways to address it, most of which include better engagement, a lot of listening, and being present. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. And our other CG candidate, Elisa Vakalis. I think I got it right that time.
Doing great, thank you. So when it comes to policies, that's a really fun question because the school board is responsible for setting the policies of the district. It's the superintendent and her team that are responsible for the administrative regulations that go with it and how it is enforced throughout the schools. So at the board level, you know, things like our discipline policy, which we are taking a look at, which, you know, can cover, you know, anything from student safety to staff safety to, you know, fairness in treatment. All of those kinds of things, I think, help, you know, with our students feeling safe. You know, looking at equity in our schools, whether it is from, you know, an educational standpoint or the opportunities for our students. If our kids don't feel like they have, you know, equal time and equal access, there's going to be, you know, some frustrations and, you know, just opportunities lost. And so I think those are things that we can look at from a policy level as a school board member.
Thank you, Elisa. All right, seat B up next. We have, oh, that was too far of a scroll. Seat B, let's begin with Marilyn Stewart, but I'll read the question as a courtesy. What specific policies? Yes, of course. My apologies for not reading it before I announced the next seat category. What specific policies do you feel are necessary to ensure student safety within our schools? Thank you, Marilyn.
Thank you. Mental health is number one. Security in the schools are number two. Parents' involvement is number three. And the issue of bullying as well, because as I go around and talk to young kids, we're hearing that a lot of bullying is going on. So we really need to have zero tolerance for that. So mental health, security in the school, parental environment, and bullying. Those are some of the things that I will focus on.
All right, thank you, Marilyn. And up next after that, I believe we have Kelly Lessens for seat B.
Great. So I actually appreciate when things are complicated. And I think that the word safety is kind of you can spin that in a lot of different directions. So here we go in 60 seconds. Number one, if we're talking short or long term or both, I think we're still in the era of COVID school. So we need to continue to promote student safety by promoting masking and social distancing. I think that's fundamental. We're going to be following CDC guidelines for as long as we need to. Number two, I think we need to focus on that student mental health component. I think we need to think about our health curriculum. If we're going to talk about SROs, which is a different kind of way to think about student safety, we need to make sure that they're locally determined. We need to make sure that they're following some stated goals and objectives, that people are trained and supported, and that they're measurable and regularly reviewed outcomes. And then finally, we need to make sure ASD is current on its wellness policy, which I've been advocating for a couple of years now. So there's lots of ways to think about safety.
Thank you, Kelly. And up next, Mark Anthony Cox.
All right. So when it comes to safety, in regards to your question is about policies. What policies can we do? I know that the board is working on the anti-racism and anti-harassment policy. That's going to be key for the students of color, of Black, Indigenous people of color. It also needs to be a zero tolerance when it comes to the drug and violence when it comes in the workplace. But we also need to make sure that everyone does their job. So for example, I've been asked this question in a different way. I said, if the cafeteria person does their job well, the students don't get sick. If the teacher does their job well, the students, they learn well. And if the security resource officer does their job well, everyone is safe in regards to the school ground. So it's a combination of everyone, all the things are set in place, and then any additional policies, of course, will hone in on that and be right on it. But as long as everyone's doing their job well, step one, and then step two, the policies are in place and enforced. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. And last but not least, for seat B, we have Judy Eledge.
Hi, well, I think that there's a lot of, we looked at the policy book and there's a lot of policies in the Anchorage School District. I think the problem is that the policies aren't enforced in a consistent manner. There's anti-harassment. I think that we're making a lot of new policies that aren't needed because we have policies that address that, but they're not being enforced in a consistent manner. Most certainly district-wide, school to school, and classroom to classroom. No excuses for bad behavior. This bad behavior has come within the last 20 or 30 years. I know I've been a teacher that long. If bad behavior is not allowed, it's not going to happen. We allow students that shouldn't be in the classroom, that need to be in a self-contained classroom. They disrupt the classroom. Oftentimes they hurt other students in the classroom. And for some reason, we feel like that the entire class should suffer because of one student. I just don't believe that. I think we just need to have a no-nonsense policy about what it is to be a good student and how you should act, period. And hold parents accountable also.
Thank you, Judy. And that wraps it up for seat B. So moving along to seat B, question 4. What specific policies do you feel are necessary to ensure student safety within our schools? For seat E, we're going to go top to bottom. Alisha, Hilde.
Thank you. I mean, student safety, one of the big issues is principals, right? The principal is the biggest predictor of student success in a school. So when we have our highly trained principals who are equipped to really manage their schools well, that's where we're going to see those policies get enforced. That's where you get the school culture. Our last Climate and Connected survey before the pandemic, we had the majority of students saying they didn't feel connected to adults. I don't remember which exact question it was, but it was something we were all really surprised about, and it was really quite sad. So using some of that data to go forward. On safety, we want SPED instruction. That's an important one where we have really strong recruitment and retention for teachers that aren't getting burned out all the time. It's very challenging work. We want to make sure we're addressing security issues just as in closed vestibules. We had that during the last 3 years where elementary school thankfully had a closed vestibule with a quick button to press. So making sure our resources are aligned. Thank you.
Thank you, Alisha. Up next, CE, question 4, Pat Higgins.
Thank you for that question. You know, the board's role is to establish expectations and to hold the district accountable, while the superintendent is responsible for the management of the district. The board is responsible for the accountability issue, holding them accountable when issues come to them, looking into it and making sure they're properly handled, not simply washing their hands of it, which is what they do right now. It's a very serious issue. We need to make sure we have the counselors in the area. We need to make sure we have the expectations, particularly handling bullying issues, that we promote this most social, the SEL, social emotional learning, but also at the top level, it needs to be a champion. If there are safety issues raised, if there are concerns in the way that people can report concerns, that needs to be addressed. There needs to be an outside review of that when issues come in that are very serious and they're not being handled at a lower level. That isn't being done today. That's why, that's putting kids at risk. And that's something that's very important to me and is a major concern.
Thank you, Pat. Up next, Sami Graham, CE, question 4.
Hi there, thank you. I think it's really important that students feel safe in the classroom. They have to feel safe in order to learn. If they don't feel safe, they're not going to learn. So nurturing environment with caring teachers is really important. Teachers who know that they are appreciated. Students feel safe when they have an expected schedule, and that's been a challenge this year. When they can feel, they also feel safe when they have steps of accomplishment. So that's really important. We need to address the behavior. We need to address the behavior issues in the classroom and give the teachers the support that's needed. Behavior issues has been an issue lately. Room clears have disrupted a lot of classrooms. The SROs needs to be looked at. I worked really closely with my SRO. I really appreciated him. They're great barometers of the school, but it's always a program that we can look at and make sure it's implemented well. Thank you.
Thank you, Sami. Up next, Rachel Blakeslee for CE question 4.
Thank you for the question. So I think there are a lot of things, as many candidates have touched on. One thing I think that we should focus on is implementing a class size cap. Right now, class sizes range across grade levels in schools, and without a class size cap, some of those classes have grown to unmanageable levels. When you have unmanageable class sizes, that it's really hard to ensure student safety, and it's hard, teachers aren't equipped with the resources to be able to do that effectively. I also think definitely increasing our focus on social emotional learning and increased mental health supports like counselors in our schools, increasing and making sure that we're adhering to COVID safety protocols right now while that pandemic is still around and our kids are going back to in-person learning environments, and making sure that we have culturally relevant instruction and cultural competence training for teachers and school leaders to reduce misconceptions around stereotyping that can cause harmful interactions for kids and bullying as well.
Thank you, Rachel. Up next, Edgar Blatchford, CE question 4.
Thank you very much. I've thought about that question a lot, ever since the first mass shooting in the United States. I believe it was in Bethel before Columbine. And when I look at that person who did the mass shooting, it was a horrible, horrible, horrible thing to do. But that person was the object of much bullying, and there was a total lack of respect for the kind of environment that he came from. And he went into a horrible environment, the school environment, where there was an allowance of bullying. I think the bottom line is zero bullying, and we have to have respect for each other. Without respect for diversity and traditions and the different cultures of what Anchorage has become, we are not going to achieve what we want to see: safety in the classroom, safety in our environment, and get some safety among the homeless people. That's part of our job. That is the job that all of us have as adult citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, Edgar. And last but not least, for CE question 4, we have Nial Sherwood Williams.
Hello, Nial Sherwood Williams, candidate for seat E. Number 1, to address student safety, armed guards in every school. Number 2, zero tolerance policy for bullying. Physical violence, expulsion immediately. If you're having social disruptions in the classroom, remediation occurs, afterwards, expulsion. And I know it sounds like a very strict policy, but we're not in the business of having a daycare center. This is a student classroom. People are here to learn. It's time to raise the bar for all students, to stop making Anchorage School District the laughing stock of the world, and for us to be able to compete against our other school districts around the state, around the nation, and especially around the world. Anchorage first, Alaska first, America first. Thank you very much. Other candidates, mute your mic.
Thank you, Nial. And moving along, friendly reminder for question 4. What specific policies do you feel are necessary to ensure student safety within our schools? So for seat E, to round out our question 4 series, let's begin with Marcus Sanders.
Thank you. That's an awesome question. I worked for the school district for about 5 or 6 years, and the last 5 years I was a safety and security officer, where I worked closely with the SRO officers, and we enforce discipline to our kids in our school. And I think having a zero tolerance for bullying is a big one for keeping our kids safe. I believe that we're coming back to our schools off this pandemic, following all the CDC recommendations. We're going to have to do being masked up, have still social distancing, and when it comes to zero tolerance, when it comes to bullying and harassment, sexual harassment is very huge in our schools. Holding our administrators accountable. They are the head of the school, so they enforce the policies in the school. So we need to start holding our administrators, who sit at the head of the school, accountable to keeping our kids safe. Having our SROs making their daily rounds in the school, talking to our kids, engaging with our kids. I think we should start there. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcus. Up next, Dora Wilson, question 4.
So when we talk about safety and policies in our schools, we definitely want to consider our students, our educators, and our families. So it's all encompassed in the safety realm. Our policies that we should look at or always consider are ones related to CDC guidelines, particularly with COVID and any other issues that might arise later on. We definitely want to look at the science, make sure our policies follow that. Our disciplinary policies that has been discussed, and it definitely does need to be looked at so that in the schools, we're making sure that they are equitable for all of our students, and our staff is educated on all of the different cultures. And there's just so many factors that should be considered with the disciplinary policies. Our SRO program, any program we have can be improved. So I definitely think we should look at improving that program as well, making sure that there's the consistency, trying to gather more statistics than we have now to make sure our students are affected in a positive way over the long term from the SRO program. And bullying, not just in person. Now we have our students that are working with the online version of bullying. So there's additional challenges there to work with. And ultimately consistent communication. So we need to make sure.
Apologies, Dora. It appears our support team has cut off the mic. So to keep us on time, fair warning, we are roughly on schedule. If we are a few minutes over 8 p.m., we do hope that you stay with us this evening until the end of our candidates forum. So last but not least, to round out question 4 with seat F, we have Kim Paulson.
So I think we need to support our school resource officers. They play a big part in actual physical school safety of our administrators, our teachers, and our students. Schools where we have bullying is a problem, and you have student violence, I think that needs to be dealt with immediately. And where it is allowed to continue, the administrators need to be held accountable. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. And thank you, seat B, seat E, seat F, and seat G for providing your responses to question 4. Moving along to question 5, our second to last question this evening for our candidates. And a friendly reminder, I'll revert back. We will return to our alphabetical order. Seat B, then seat E, seat F, and seat G. So question 5, due to the Anchorage School District facing significant fiscal challenges going forward, what would you target for reduced funding? Moving along to seat B, let's begin with candidate Judy Eledge.
Well, it's a difficult decision, but since 80 to 90% of our budget happens to be in personnel, we're going to have to take a look at that. And we also need to look at making decisions like this year when there were no students, delivering buses, delivering computers and lunches in big buses. It seems like to me that no one is thinking about how they might save money, and we're going to have to look at it. But we're actually going to have to look at personnel when 80 to 85% of that budget is personnel. It's going to have to be looked at. It's not popular, but it's going to have to be. We may have to look at some other some things in schools. Our population is going down. We need to look at boundary changes. People don't like boundary changes, but we may have to close a school or so. We cannot continue to spend almost $1 billion a year. We just can't do it. So it's going to have to be looked at, all of them. Tough decisions.
Thank you, Judy. Up next, seat B, question 5. We have Mark Anthony Cox.
Thank you for the opportunity. I get to use my finance experience to let you know that tough decisions can be met with a really good plan. So here's the plan that I have to propose. Though we are nearing towards $1 billion, 86.2% of it goes towards the salaries and benefits. And I don't see us cutting back on that. If anything, we would love to retain our teachers. We'd love to incentivize them for the hard work that they do for students like me who have this opportunity to be here. Now, the other 13.8%, that we can manage, 8% of it being maintenance. We have 80 facilities for schools and upwards to 90 when it comes to just real estate we've acquired, it seems. And what I propose is, for example, for high school, when it comes to the freshman class, seeing as they're so young, it would be wise for us to utilize a school like Eagle River to turn that to a 9th grade facility so that we can maintain the educational capabilities that they have achieved and then transition them to that younger adulthood when it comes to 10th grade and whatnot. And so those are one of the many plans that I have in order to control our budget as well as bidding process and our maintenance repairs. Thank you for the time.
All right, thank you, Mark. Up next, let's go to Marilyn Stewart, seat B, question 5. Ms. Stewart, I believe you're mute. There we
Yes,
go.
yeah, you guys have me muted. You know, I agree with Judy. You know, this is a very high budget, 86.1%. And then when we look at where our students are placed at right now at the bottom, now I'm not saying that you know, the children are where they are today because of the lack of what they're being taught. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that I am concerned about this 86.1%. And then I'm concerned about the 139 programs that we have currently in the school district. So, you know, we are going to have to take a serious look at this budget. And I don't, you know, if we're going to spend dollar wisely, when we look at our kids, we need to know that those dollars are giving us proven results. And right now, I'm not seeing that. So the budget will be something that I would seriously be looking at. Thank you.
Thank you, Marilyn. And last but not least, for seat B, question 5, we have Kelly Lessens.
Great. So I think the question of, you know, how do we confront our fiscal challenges is a really important question because it's realistic. On one hand, we need to think, okay, what's ineffective? And on the other hand, we need to think, what is effective? How do we keep what is effective and maybe weed out what is less effective? So for me, I first think, what programs do we know are just not cutting the mustard? What programs are not working for ASD? Let's jettison those. In the meantime, let's look at what an evidence-based model for best practices in schools looks like. We have this 2015 Picus-Auden study, which the district invested in, which told us that when we choose to invest in K through 3 class sizes of 15 students or less, we are going to have better long-term outcomes. We know that when we invest in our preschool, we will have better long-term outcomes. So we need to think about investing in the people that make our district run, and we need to make sure we get rid of the programs that are hindering the progress we would like to make.
Thank you, Kelly, and thank you, CB candidates. And a friendly reminder to all of our candidates, our support team, if they do hear background noise while your seat category is not up to speak, they will kindly mute you, and apologies if there's any inadvertent muting or unmuting for any of our panelists or candidates this evening. So moving along to seat E for question 5. Due to the Anchorage School District facing significant fiscal challenges going forward, what would you target for reduced funding? And moving along, let's go with Nial Sherwood Williams for question 5.
Hi, yes, Niall Sherwood Williams, candidate for CE. As is statutorily required, meaning by law, the school board has to balance the budget. Yet I did not see one candidate or one school board member at last week's assembly meeting when the school board budget was scheduled to be ratified. It's an absolute disgrace. We have to balance the budget. It's our requirement. I promise to go through every single line item on that school board budget. We have 91 Anchorage School District buildings. I'll vote to sell half of them. Among the teachers and the staff, we need to cut a significant portion, and that might mean up to a third. It's time to start buckling down the belt of the Anchorage School District. The budget's out of control. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Niall. Up next for question 5, we have Edgar Blatchford.
Thank you, Parker. That's a very difficult question to answer. I have worked in state government a couple of times at different cabinet levels. I've worked in city government as a mayor of a small town, and there's not a budget that I haven't had to cut. I think I have a lot of experience dealing with budgets, even in private corporations. I have had to cut budgets. But when I look at the Anchorage School District, I realize that the mission of the Anchorage School District hasn't changed much since the school district was formed with the first school in 1915. That is to educate people for the future. And we have to educate people for the future. We have to go back to what is the mission of the educational system we have in Anchorage. That is to be able to compete in a new, fast-changing world with every possible advantage that we have with people from all over the world. The world is changing. We have to change with the world now. Thank you.
Thank you, Edgar. Up next, we have Rachel Blakeslee, CE question 5.
This is a tough question. I think that I'm going to start by saying that I do admire the budget that the district was able to create amid so many financial challenges, in addition to COVID. But I think that, things that I'm skeptical of are things, they've talked about how we are at a risk of losing an additional 750 plus teaching jobs in the next few years without additional revenue sources. And I am not ever a big fan of cutting teachers. And so when we're talking about what has to be cut, I think about how the superintendent expenditures increased by $1 million, despite the huge budget deficits that we're facing. And then if we're asking our teachers and students to do more with less, then we should probably be asking the same about our leadership's operating needs. I probably try to re-examine different programs and school buildings that could be consolidated or removed. And I think that making sure that all the efficiencies are in place are really essential.
Thank you, Rachel. Up next, CE question 5, we have Sami Graham.
Hi, thanks. Yeah, $841+ million is a huge budget. So over $20,000 per student. We need to spend the taxpayers' money wisely. I think that's really important. We must strike that balance between providing well-needed services, but controlling the spending, because we can't further damage the Anchorage economy, the Alaskan economy. What do we need to target for reduced funding? Well, personnel, like they said, we've lost about 8,000 students, so we probably will have to make some personnel cuts. But we have some facilities that we need to look at. We need boundaries that may need to be changed. Maintenance, we can always look at maintenance, and definitely in administration. We need to look at every program, but always putting student achievement at the priority, always putting student achievement at the priority. Thank you.
Thank you, Sami. Up next for CE question 5, we have Pat Higgins.
The Anchorage School District has got one of the larger classroom sizes in the country. 36 states have a maximum effective classroom size. And when they examine them, grades 1 through 4, you're talking about 15 kids on 4th grade up, you're talking about 25, and they've established that we're way above that. So the last place I want to cut is in the classroom if possible. In 9 years on the school board, we cut administration, we scrutinized the budget, we had every department come in front of us, we reviewed it, and we played a role in looking at that budget. We assumed responsibility for the final budget. We didn't delegate that to the superintendent. So we've got to look at this budget in a very effective way. There were some large savings maybe in admin, but this type of cut is going to be difficult to achieve. Combining schools results in less revenues. The state gives you less when you have larger schools, and that undercuts that. So you have to look at the budget as a whole to be able to pull this together. It's not going to be easy. It's probably going to involve increasing classroom sizes or reduction in teachers at some point in order to pull this off. There's no other way, unless the state comes through with additional funding and we can balance it that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Last but not least, for CE question 5, we have Alisha Hilde.
Thank you. My priority has been keeping funding in the classroom. I'm very vocal about that. The way we do that is looking at other long-term planning choices. So I pushed for multi-year bonding because of the efficiencies and cost savings there. We were able to redirect that to safely reopening schools with COVID mitigation. In future years, that's going to be directed available resources for improving student outcomes. We've also just approved a policy I pushed for where we do a once a decade rezoning of our district. This is a very challenging one because it talks about potential school consolidations, but we have a responsibility to use our capital facilities responsibly. So that's going to be beginning in 2022. And then we also have to talk about innovative ways to deliver education. It is a fiscal cliff. It is coming. And I don't want to, just say we're going to lay off teachers as the solution. We need to be able to deliver education in innovative ways, building off some of the gains of this past year. And I look forward to seeing how our teachers incorporate some of that this fall as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Alisha. And thank you, CE candidates. Moving along to CF for question 5. Question 5, due to the Anchorage School District facing significant fiscal challenges going forward, what would you target for reduced funding? Starting with CF, let's begin with Marcus Sanders.
Yes, that's a very good question and a very hard topic. Or no one really wants to talk about budget or cutting, but we have so many schools right now. They might be over or under capacity. We might look at consolidating some of those schools. It might just have to come to that. We have to look at the some of our administrators are getting six-figure salaries, and need to be caps on some of those six-figure salaries. So we could look at some things like that. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Marcus. Up next, let's go to Dora Wilson.
I truly believe that investing in our kids is an investment in our community and the future of our community. And in talking to educators over the past 10 years easily, they are consistently concerned about the cuts and where they're going to cut. So there's no program that I could identify that is in excess. They're consistently doing more with less. Not to say that we won't deal with budget cuts, but there is definitely we're going to need input from the educators, from the district, from the administrators, from the community, in order to find ways to be more efficient and take advantage of the different options that COVID has brought us, the different learning opportunities, and how we can work efficiently in that capacity as well. And improving retention and recruitment for our teachers, so there is less turnaround. That is an issue that needs to be worked with and dealt with. Our educators do not feel, in my conversation with them, that they have a future in our district, and oftentimes take their investment and move elsewhere. Thank you.
Thank you, Dora. And last but not least, for CF question 5, we have Kim Paulson. And Kim, apologies, you're on mute still. No problem, no problem.
Right. Thank you.
You're welcome, you're welcome.
So most important thing in our budget is to make sure we keep our teacher and classroom supports. The budget is so large that there should be no reason for our teachers to struggle financially within their classroom. They shouldn't have to provide their own supplies with the budget that we have per student. The other thing we need to look at are programs that we need to look at them more efficiently. You know, sorry, the thing always distracts me. So we need to look at our programs and see how they can be run more efficiently. And also just look at outside of our classroom, unnecessary improvements to buildings, administrative cost. I would say we need to look outside the classroom when we're looking at reducing our budgets. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. And on behalf of the West Anchorage Candidates Forum, apologies for the time cards. If we would have been able to have a digital clock, we would have found a way to make that happen. But we thank our time.
That's not a problem.
No problem, no problem. Well, moving along to our last seat for question 5, last seat. Let's begin with reading the question. Due to the Anchorage School District facing significant fiscal challenges going forward, what would you target for reduced funding? Let's begin with Elisa Vakalis.
Yes, thank you so much. The first thing is I always want to take our budget and design it around our goals and our guardrails only. Anything outside of that is not a priority in the budget and is fair game to be considered for being cut. As many people know, it's our reading K through 3, our math 3 through 9, and our secondary, our life, college, and career. So that's where we're going to put our money first. Obviously, anything outside of the classroom, should be considered. And the superintendent has proposed cuts in the past, which the board has put off and chosen to fund in other ways. Not to get rid of programs, but to redo them, make them more efficient, figure out how to deliver them differently so the kids are still getting their services. I think there's probably plenty of programs that we can take a look at in that regard. But one of the first things I would also do is highly advocate, which I've been doing for the last 5 years, to redo the district cost factor study at the state level. Anchorage is 1.0. We don't get a multiplier. Matsu should be the 1.0. If we do that, it costs no extra money to the state, but ASD would get $27 million more as of the last calculation. So look at ways to bring in money, not just cut.
Thank you, Elisa. Up next, Carl Jacobs with seat G for question 5.
Thank you. Aside from student achievement, the fiscal situation is without question the most pressing issue facing the Anchorage School District. In a training facilitated by ASD just 2 weeks ago, ASD's Office of Management of Budget indicated the fiscal situation is a metaphorical can that has been kicked down the road. The next board will be tasked with providing true leadership in this area. Before the receipt of the nearly $50 million in one-time federal funds, we were contending with a budget gap which exceeded $20 million. But budget gaps of a variety of sizes have been a regular occurrence in years past. I think we have a unique opportunity while recovering from the pandemic to take a top to bottom look at district finances and identify ways to incorporate distance learning in years to come for students and family who found success within the last year. This could reduce long-term facility operation costs and time. With that said, I still think we have a budget which exceeds $800 million and must continue to improve efficiency to rebuild public trust that has been lost in years past. We must also recognize that a key role of the school board is to advocate for the resources necessary for our students to succeed. 1 in 4 members of the Alaska legislature in Juneau is brand new. We should be advocating for the resources necessary with those folks. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl, and thank you all candidates for the aforementioned seats. I would like to provide this bit of information or otherwise disclaimer. As we're nearing our end time, we would very much appreciate the participation and agreement of all candidates and those watching us this evening here in the municipality of Anchorage for our West Anchorage School Board Candidates Forum. We would appreciate you bearing with us, staying on with us, as we will inadvertently end up running over our previously scheduled time, although that is a benefit of Zoom. So our last question of the evening, question 6, will go in the order of seat E, seat F, seat G, and seat B. candidates know that I will be quick to interject, and I apologize that I will have to interject, but in the interest of time, would very much like to ensure that we are not taking too much time of anyone's evening who may be viewing with us this evening, or who may be participating as a panelist. So starting with seat E for question 6. Do you support continuing to provide robust equal protections for our LGBTQI students, including allowing students to participate in school sports that match their gender identity? And going along to CE, let's begin with Alisha Hilde, CE question 6.
Thank you. I'm asking for all kids getting equal opportunity to learn in our district and equal access to education, and our existing board policies for sports. That's controlled by ASA. You know, I was a band director, so the day I have an opinion on what sports eligibility is not something I, you know, that's something they manage. And as a board member, I don't give input into what they decide for sports eligibility, but certainly we want to make sure all children feel safe and welcome in our schools, and that it's a inclusive environment for children to learn. My focus is really on improving academics, so that's going to be my priority over the next 3 years if voters choose to re-elect me, and that's what I look forward to improving in our district. Thanks.
Thank you, Alisha. Up next, question 6, CE, Pat Higgins. Mr. Higgins, you're on mute still.
That better?
There we go.
Sorry. Absolutely, and I'm proud of the fact that Alaskans for Equality endorsed me. When I was on the school board, I spoke out on issues where radio shows were trying to attack it over bathroom issues or things made up, and trying to defend that. We need all kids to feel safe in the school, to feel protected, to feel welcomed, and we need to be supportive of them. And the idea that type of discrimination would not be there. I'm proud of the fact that in the Anchorage School District, the high schools were all doing Day of Silence, where they were trying to do something to say, we're standing with you. And that type of behavior and that type of conduct out there is just absolutely spectacular. And I appreciate that. So absolutely, I will want them to have a robust equal protections. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Up next, CE question 6, Sami Graham.
Hi, equity is that kind of the word of the day, but equality is what our Declaration of Independence declares, that all men are created equal and endowed by the Creator with certain inalienable rights. And I definitely believe in that. I believe in the 14th Amendment of the Constitution, but I also believe in following the science and the biology. And I think that it's important for the district to look at the science behind the LGBTQ world and make sure that we're making sure that it's safe for all students in the district. So the question I have would be, can boys go into girls sports or compete for girls sports? That's a question that I think Alisha mentioned would be an ASA question. So I would make sure that it's fair for all students across the board, not just one certain kind of student. Thank you.
Thank you, Sami. Up next, Rachel Blakeslee with CE for question 6.
Thank you. I just fixed my tech issues, so appreciate that. Yes, so I am always and will always be a vocal ally of our LGBTQ plus community. I have a few family members and a lot of personal friends that are a part of that community and have watched my own students struggle and navigate a world where their identities haven't been accepted or embraced. So I 100% support equal protections for all of students and family members that identify as part of the LGBTQ community. As far as sports go, I will also say that I am not an expert in terms of what the protocols are for sports. I think that making sure that there is equity is just as important as in ensuring that there's equality. So making sure that we're addressing that that those opportunities are distributed equitably, even among especially among our LGBTQ students, is really essential. So though I'm not a sports expert and sharing what that looks like, I think that I would absolutely support making sure that that those equitable opportunities are accessible.
Thank you, Rachel. And up next, Edgar Blatchford for CE question 6.
Thank you very much. I have no problem. I have no problem supporting the end of discrimination, any kind of discrimination that hurts and is harmful to any American citizen or any visitor to the country. We have got to stop this bullying based on personal preferences of people that don't like a different type of a person because they are not that kind of a person. I just think it's an awful thing to do in the school system where you allow discrimination against other students based on what they want to be. You know, so I would do anything and I would support anything that would outlaw any kind of discrimination. And there's one thing I might add to, this is going to be a federal question. It's going to go all the way up to the Supreme Court, and we're going to be fighting about it. But I think we have to make a statement once and for all that we end discrimination of any kind in the school system. Thank you.
Thank you, Edgar. And last but not least for CE, we have Nial Sherwood Williams, question 6.
Hi, yes, Nial Sherwood Williams. Number one, I would close down the Planned Parenthood murder slaughter clinic that houses itself at the ASD headquarters as well as at multiple schools. It seeks to have systemic murder that occurs among many students. I would also close down the sexual education programs immediately. With regards to LGBTQ protections, the real protection comes for the 99% that are within the Anchorage School District. You use the bathroom of the genitalia of your birth. You use the locker room of the genitalia of your birth. It's time that we stop the discrimination against the family, the destruction of the youth. The parent and the child are the number one within the education system. It's time to stop identity politics within the Anchorage School District. Thank you very much. Please vote Nial Sherwood Williams, the only true conservative for CE. Thank you.
All right, moving along to CF, question 6. And as a friendly reminder for the candidates and / panelists, the question is in the chat that you have access to. And to save time, I'm just going to go to each candidate. So CF, let's begin with Kim Paulson.
Sorry. So I think that all students should be treated well and respected, regardless of what they believe. But I also believe that girls shouldn't be lose their scholarships or their opportunity for a scholarship because someone with a testosterone level that girls don't have and can't compete against is competing against them. So people in the LGBTQI community should not be bullied, but I also believe that our girls or any, that they need to be protected. That's what Title IX is for. It was to give women the opportunity to compete. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Up next, we have Dora Wilson, CF question 6.
Yes, I fully support the rights of individuals to a free and appropriate education, regardless of their sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression. Our LGBTQIA students, I learned a statistic recently that 40% of our homeless youth are consider themselves to be LGBTQIA, and that is a huge concern. I want to make sure that our students all have the supports that they need to be successful in life, and our homeless youth are obviously included in the students that need those additional supports. Regarding athletics, I've had kids, my son wrestled, he wrestled against girls. There's certain sports that they already have both genders competing against each other. I do know that that ASA has control of those policies, so I would support any additional policies that we have powers of as school board members to make sure that we support all of our students.
Thank you, Dora. And last but not least, for seat F, we have Marcus Sanders.
Oh, thank you, and a good question. You know, I think I'm just gonna stick with the matter at hand in front of my campaign with the budget, math proficiencies, and the safety security of our children and the security of their future. And I also agree with Alisha that is an ASA issue. I believe that all children should be inclusive and treated equally. But I will stick to the issue at hand, which is budget, math and reading proficiency, and the safety and security of our children. I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcus. Up next, seat G for question 6. We will begin with Carl Jacobs.
Thank you. I really appreciate the question because I think it's a great litmus test for candidates to determine who is truly ready and willing to advocate in the best interest of all students. Alisha and I have served as advocates for youth in the LGBTQ+ community for the last decade. I've seen the after effects of what it looks like when a child feels discriminated against or not included in their education and in the community. As an elected member of the board, I fully support acting within my scope to examine and implementing strategies which will ensure each one of the 42,000 students currently served by ASD feels welcome and included. And I think the board should focus on doing the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. Last but not least, for seat G, we have Elisa Vakalis.
Thank you so much. You said it perfectly. This is a very personal question for me in so many ways. First, as a school board member, obviously we are going to follow all of the laws and the rules that govern us, whether it is ASA or federal, component, whatever. I firmly and fundamentally believe that, we need equity and access to all students, for academics and schools and education. All means all. I have a kiddo who is trying to figure out who he is. And I know he's going to come up against a very hard road, because of our society. And that breaks my heart. I want him to have all the opportunities. But I also have a daughter who would get her butt whooped if she had to compete against somebody who didn't have the same, female physiology as her. And so it's a big question that our community has to grapple with and to be fair with and to have grace with each other for. All means all. Thank you very much for your time tonight.
Thank you. And last but not least, we have our seat B candidates for question 6. Let's begin with Marilyn Stewart.
Well, I've listened to everything everyone has said, and I introduced myself as coming from the Deep South. I came up during the time of the Civil Rights Movement and school integration, and I have experienced firsthand what racism is like. And so my main priority is going to be educating our students, and I will stand up and speak out against any form of racism against individuals. We want equal protection for every student, but there's the ASA issue, and I think that we should let that remain with the ASA issue and just focus on educating these kids and make sure that any form of racism that appears when it raises its ugly head, we deal with it right then and there. That's why I stand on those issues.
Thank you, Marilyn. Up next, we have Mark Anthony Cox.
Thank you for the question. So what I love is that from our charity, we have this quote saying, what we can do, we will do, because to us, your family, because behind the eyes of everyone is someone's child. So when it comes to the school board position, we need to see the children as children and recognize that we are their advocates. They are our constituents. So as we know, when it comes to this topic, the LGBTQ community, that just like the military had to deal with the don't ask, don't tell policy, when it became law, we made the pivot necessary. So as of February 25th, it became law to not discriminate against. So now we have to make the necessary pivots. So in order to make the necessary pivots while also adhering to the belief values of everyone, let's when it comes to the sports situation, let's advocate for more intramural sports so that there's not a confusion in regards to some students losing their availability to go to collegiate sports where the atmosphere is going to be different. And then also when it comes to the locker room situation, let's create dedicated single stall areas so there wouldn't be any type of uncomfortability. These are some of the plans I'd love to offer. Thank you for your time, Mark Anthony Cox for seat B as in Bravo.
Thank you, Mark. Up next, we have Kelly Lessens. Question 6.
Great. I'm glad we're at the end of the evening here. The short answer is yes, I support continuing to provide robust equal protections for our LGBTQI students. I will never support the codification of discrimination. In fact, as a historian, as a trained historian, a cultural historian, one of the things that's actually important to me is that we educate all of our students to the robust contributions that people of every shape, size, background have contributed to our nation's history. So I am aware of the struggles that LGBTQ individuals have had within that nation, the national history, and I believe that their stories offer important windows and mirrors for all of our students. So no, that's not an athletic question. I functionally believe that the role of ASD is to educate our students. So yes, I will defend all of our students and I want to educate them.
Thank you, Kelly. And last but not least, for seat B on question 6, our final question of the evening, we have Judy Eledge.
Thank you very much. First of all, I think the Anchorage School District has a very strict policy on any type of harassment, and that includes any student that walks in that door, does not matter what their sex is, what their race is. There's a policy already there. But I want to remind everybody that when we break the ties between the culture being taught at home and the one that is being taught at schools, people began to distrust, stop trusting the school and working within their schools. As a woman of the 60s who fought very, very hard for women's rights, I most certainly think it's atrocious that we have we have young boys running against women. It is not fair in any way, shape, or form. And even though I do not believe that there is any discrimination, should be any discrimination against any child, we're walking into a whole different realm when you talk about a man competing against a woman. And I will never, ever say that that's okay. That's how I feel. And I think a good majority of the public feels just the same.
All right, thank you, Judy. And thank you to all of our candidates in seat B, seat E, seat F, and seat G. Thank you all for joining us this evening, providing your introductions, providing your responses to each of the 6 questions. To wrap up, and just as a friendly reminder to those that are still with us or those that may watch this recording on another day or another evening at their leisure, for seat B in our Anchorage School District School Board, we have Marilyn Stewart, Mark Anthony Cox, Kelly Lessens, and Judy Eledge. In seat E, we have Alisha, Hilde, Pat Higgins, Sami Graham, Rachel Blakeslee, Edgar Blatchford, and Nial Sherwood Williams. For seat F, we have Marcus Sanders, Dan Loring, Dora Wilson, and Kim Paulson. And for seat G, we have Elisa, Vakalis, and Carl Jacobs. So again, on behalf of the West Anchorage Community Council Candidates Forum, and on behalf of Planning Committee, and on behalf of the North Star, Sand Lake, Turnagain, Spenard, and Midtown Community Councils, we dearly thank our 15 candidates who were able to join us this evening, and we missed our one candidate who was unable to join us, Dan Loring. And With that, I'd like to provide a few friendly reminders. And thank you again. You know, we can't do this without the support of our staff, or excuse me, our volunteers who were able to join us this evening, who are each members of their own respective community councils, who were so kind as to take time out of their evening. We have Meg Milkey, who was our timekeeper. We have our Tawny, who was the pinner. She was our pinner in that she provided the screen for you to look at so that you could see the candidates speaking to you. The unpinned monitor, panelists, and chat manager, Anna, and the questions poster and muter, Lindsay. Thank you on behalf of all of your efforts, our volunteers, the various members of our various councils who were able to join us for those 7 planning meetings to ensure that we hosted a successful school board candidates forum in this year of 2021. I'd like to thank you all. And so as a friendly reminder, the ballots for this Anchorage municipal election were mailed today. Not sure when you'll receive those, but they were mailed today. So hopefully you get them soon. The election day is Tuesday, April 6th, and those ballots must be received by the municipal clerk's office no later than 8 p.m. on Tuesday, April 6th of 2021. As a friendly reminder, we will be sending we will be distributing this recording on our respective Facebook pages or otherwise in our various community council meetings, which occur on various days of each month. We also sent these yes and no questions to candidates, and those also will be posted to our website, and we will email them out as soon as possible. And one final reminder, please join our West Anchorage Mayoral Candidate Forum this Thursday, March 18th from 6 to 8 p.m. or roughly 8 p.m. as it is now 8:21 p.m. And to find a link to be able to view that West Anchorage Candidates Mayoral Forum or Mayoral Candidates Forum, you may go to on Facebook. I do believe Sand Lake and Spenard have those links posted. I also believe that Midtown and North Star and perhaps Turnagain will be posting those either online or certainly be distributing that link via email or otherwise. But for those of you who are still with us, it's a quick read. It is tinural.com/West ANC Mayoral Forum. That is tinural.com, West ANC Mayoral Forum. Again, on behalf of the North Star, Sand Lakes, Nard, Turnagain, and Midtown Community Councils, thank you very much for joining us this evening, taking these 2 hours and 22 minutes out of your evening. You know, I understand that we are all busy these days. Life is busy. There's a lot happening, but very much appreciate everyone taking these precious minutes of our days out of your day to be able to join us this evening. And so with that, not really sure what else I can say other than I very much appreciate you all. Our support team very much appreciates you all, and the 37 respective community councils which contribute to the discourse of the Anchorage Assembly. Very much appreciate the work that you're doing in advocating for the children of the municipality of Anchorage, and appreciate you all putting yourselves up for that vote that is occurring and will be finalized on April 6th. So with that, thank you everyone. And it appears that it's dusk out, and you know, in a couple of weeks, it'll still be light out at 8:23 p.m. So
God bless you, Parker.
Thank you. And
Thanks, everyone.
Awesome
Bye.
job,
Good night.
Parker. Give you a hand, Parker.
Zoom
Thanks for all
forum.
your work, guys.